All right, so that's what we covered last time, if you remember. We were talking about the SDLC, which we refer to as Software Development Lifecycle. We talked about these different phases of specifying, designing, implementing, validating, verifying, and then we end up with what we know here, a prototype, right? Who can provide definition here for prototype, like what it means? How can you define prototype? Yes, please.
It's a product that you produce.
A product that you produce, okay.
The first product.
Okay, good. So we agreed that there are, yes.
The first draft of a program.
Very good. So initial draft usually of any program that you're building. Excellent. Okay, so we talked about 3 different types, if you remember. So we talked about the paper prototype, we talked about the digital prototype, and also the hardware prototype, right? And we explained that we can start with the paper for what type of requirements? Clear or unclear ones?
Unclear.
The unclear ones. Once they are clear, we simply move to digital, and then possibly, if there is any hardware aspect, this could also be prototyped. All right, so today we'll talk mostly, okay, let's review this quickly. We were talking about verification and validation. Who can tell me the difference between both? Which one comes first?
Verification.
Verification comes first. How many possible testing we can accommodate? Any example? Which one deals with the user side?
Waterfall.
Hmm?
You mean waterfall?
No, I mean which type of testing works with the user side?
Validation.
Validation.
But it's validation, but what type? What type of testing? Is it component testing? Yes. So we go for acceptance testing, right? So acceptance testing is the one that deals with the stakeholder side. Okay, all other 3 stages, if you remember this model, all the others like system test, integration test, component test, these mostly, it's the team and the development side, right? Okay. All right, then we talked about the evolution and how changes could be tracked, could possibly be merged into the process you're implementing, and how to end up with this prototype that could better reflect like your understanding of the system and becomes the contract actually between you and the stakeholder side. Today we're learning more about the incremental delivery. We'll talk about this in a while. There is 2 more models. We'll talk about the spiral model and the modern process model known as RUP. And we'll look into the advantages and disadvantages of each of them. I'll keep this to the end if we have time, or as a home take exercise if so. Okay, let's start with this model here. We'll talk here about the incremental delivery. This might remind you of another concept that we covered last week. Incremental process, right? How different is the incremental delivery from incremental process? Any idea? Okay, let's see this. We start here with defining the outline requirements. We assign these requirements to increments. What do we mean by increments? Okay, so like in Capstone, a 1 full year project, and you will have, let's say, to come up with hundreds of requirements. Let's assume 100 requirements. And you only have, let's say, 3 or 4 months to develop. How will you proceed? Do you have to deliver everything in these requirements? No, we go for prioritization and segmentation. What is that? So prioritization means, okay, I'm gonna go with these top 15 features. I need to deliver this part of the functional requirements and only maybe 2 or 3 non-functional. So these features are enough to make the system up and running, okay? And I will start segmenting them based on how many increments I have. So let's assume I have to repeat this cycle 4 times. Okay? So what are the requirements you will pick for each of these increments? Okay? Now let me ask you another question. how do we start with these requirements? Do we start with the hardest or things that we know? Things we know?
Hardest.
Hardest? Okay, so I'm building a web application, let's say, that looks into crowd, and it can analyze, let's say, their facial expression and tell who's happy, who's sad, okay? Simple, right? So this dashboard requires a login as an admin, so I can be able, let's say, to view this interface. Okay, do I go with the login implementation first? So I keep this, and I jump into the key milestone, right? So what's gonna be the longest line of this implementation? Things that might hold some uncertainties, right? So we go for this, we start assigning these requirements into our increments. We design our architecture as we explained before. This could be MVC model, this could be client to server, this could be peer-to-peer, whatever, just any model, okay? And then we develop this increment. So we agreed this increment will hold four total requirements out of 10. So we deliver this, we validate, right? We integrate the increments, which will make up something we know as subsystems, right? Then these subsystems will be validated to turn it into a real full system. Once ready, we go for deployment. What's deployment? So we make the system active and alive. Okay, so it is actually now hosted on a server. People can access it remotely. They can interact with it. And I would say this is the hardest testing. Yeah? Because previously, you're testing with a group of people, you're testing over a network based on some test cases you're putting, right? But here, when you deploy it on a server, you might receive 10,000, let's say, requests at a time. So this is now a challenge, right? People might try to steal data from your system, so it needs to be secured, right? So you can't really deploy it unless it's 100% ready. That's why we do the validation and verification a lot of times, let's say, before we go into this step. Now, once it's deployed, there's one of two possibilities. Either success or failure. Yeah? So if this was successful, you simply proceed and consider this final product, right? And we go just for maintenance if needed. The other side, we simply mark it incomplete and we start over with the development, validation, integration, and stuff like that. So we call this incremental delivery. This is not a model, okay? But this is a strategy that we can integrate into different models. Okay. So let me ask you something. Okay, let's look at this first. Okay, so why we think incremental delivery is important? Let me ask you. Okay, tell me just why you think this model is good. Yes.
So we can just like make sure that everything is working properly.
Okay.
Before we go to the actual next step, the final step of actually deploying it and
Very good.
finally create that system into the world. So I think that's the reason why we have to do these step by step.
Very good. Okay, very good. So you ensure that the system is ready before you proceed with other, like your increments, let's say. That's very good.
And I feel like it divides all the components perfectly, and it takes care of each one like independently. So when it's put together, it's like less likely for like any types of faults or errors.
Very good. Yes, true. Yes.
Because we validate so many times, not just once at the end.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Okay. Yes, please.
To make sure that we fulfill most of the requirements.
True. True. So these increments will give you better capacity of accommodating more requirements, more changes. Of course. Excellent. All right. So yes, first of all, customers are happy, right? They get to see results every now and then. And these increments could be very short term, like within a week. So every week you see something. That's perfect. System functionality is available early. We said we're not starting with the easy stuff, right? We're starting with the heavy ones, right? So we get to see actual functionality early. Early increments act as a prototype to help gather requirements for next increments, right? So every time you validate this increment, what happens? You're collecting requirements that could be done in next increments, right? So this helps you with the refinement process. Lower risk of project failure, yeah? Because you get to see results. So how can the project fail? If you're getting feedback on time, if you validate on time, if you get to see products, prototypes, and so on. Okay. So this idea was implemented into something we know as a spiral model. Let's look at it closely. Okay? So what is the spiral model? We start reading it from the core all the way out. Okay, so it's like in a clockwise, you just move this way. Okay? And there is no limited number of cycles or increments that you can actually take. So these number of iterations can actually be as many as you want. All right. Can I say that, for example, I have the same level of phases covered in every increment? Look at this. What is covered here? We start, review, concept of operation, requirements plan. Then what happens in the second phase? Of course, we end up with a prototype here, right? Now this prototype grows with every new increment. Do you see that? So it becomes prototype 2, 3, 4, and so on. So here, before we start, we go for risk analysis. We said this model is best when it comes to assessing risks, right? So if there is any early risk, it will be able to detect it and also overcome this one if there is any. So it will set up a plan in, like at any point, just to make sure that this risk is no longer there. Now I have a prototype. Okay, now I have the second prototype ready, and then I go for simulation. I go for software requirements, validation of requirements, development plan. Then I go again for another risk analysis. I go for a third prototype. I do complete my simulation models, but then I go for design, validation and verification, and then integration and testing plan. And last cycle, I'm having the operational prototype. Again, risk analysis before we start. We continue with the simulation. Then we start detailed design, coding, unit test, integration test, acceptance test, and service. All right, so very few of these phases were actually repeated across all these increments or iterations. Like risk analysis, for example, it takes place here, second, third, and fourth, right? Maybe simulation, models, and benchmarking. Again, this happens across all the iterations. But do you see anything else that's repeated? So in incremental development process, if you remember, we had a very basic structure that keeps on repeating. It is analysis, remember? Remember this? So we had 3 stages: specification, development, and validation. And this happens into iterations, right? We define, we provide initial draft, define draft, second, third, and so on. Now this is not the case here. Here, every iteration is a whole new process. You can define its own phases, right? Either to make the focus on design or requirements or validation and testing, as you like. All right, so usually, do you think this model is successful?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me the advantages of it?
The risk analysis.
Risk analysis, perfectly made. Ensuring what? Ensuring 2 things.
The customer is happy.
Customer is happy and?
Cost efficient. The system meets the goals and benchmarks.
Very good. So we end up with a quality product, right? So since you're taking care of most of the risks every now and then you will most likely deliver what's needed, right? In a quality manner. Perfect. I heard something about the cost.
It's like the cost would be efficient.
Efficient?
Within budget, yeah.
So this is within budget? Do you agree, guys?
Well, like, no, it's expensive.
The cost, yeah,
Because
it's
of how heavy
expensive.
it is.
So again, it's like you're repeating the waterfall, let's say, I don't know, like how many times? This might be 5 times, 7 times, 9 times, 10
Like 3
times.
different prototypes, that's pretty expensive.
Exactly.
And say that's a perfect point. And also the cost of providing these prototypes might be expensive. Very good. So again, here you're just making a lengthier model from, let's say, the incremental. But the idea here can grow beyond the scope that's specified, and this can actually affect the cost. And of course, you're like sometimes, like here, for example, the entire team, let's say, of requirements is occupied while they are not involved here or here. Do you see that? So this might create actually a gap of miscommunication between the team resources. So in general, like this model came into, as we mentioned, it came in to overcome any risk possibility and provide a quality product, but because it might take longer than expected and it might affect the cost at a certain point, this wasn't very heavily utilized when it comes to practice of industry. So again, it doesn't have a fixed phase like specification or design. Each cycle ends with a simple prototype and every phase has its own objective. Now they come up with that modern approach, which we know as RUP, Rational Unified Process. And believe it or not, this is a typical intro to big concept that you are fully aware of. UML
Yes.
diagrams. So UML came in part of this process mostly, but let's look into first how it's designed. So here we have clear 4 phases. One that we know, inception. Second, elaboration. Third, construction. And last one is transition. Now you might see this arrow in between, right? Which indicate that every phase itself is, it's iterative, exactly. So we're still with the concept of incremental delivery, right? So we're still here with the incremental delivery. But again, once you're done, the new iteration starts. So we have inception, and this is again an iteration on its own. Elaboration, you iterate till you make sure this is over. Then this one starts till it's over and satisfying. Then we go for transition. In inception, we define business case. In elaboration, we define the problem and which system architecture we will implement. Construction, the biggest part. Design, development, testing. And then transition is simply deployment, right? So sometimes you don't get the full system active. Okay, sometimes you deploy what's ready. And then when the next increment is ready, you simply go for integration testing. And then you deploy the second increment and so on. So you can do it still in iterations, given that every phase iterate as many times as we want. Now this one I would say is a combination of 2 models. Who can tell me?
Can you repeat the question?
So this model, like from all what we know, like how many models did we take so far? Let's count them. We know waterfall, incremental, V model,
The bone, spiral.
spiral, excellent,
And this one.
and this one. Okay, so can you tell me this one? Is it reminding you of any other models?
I think incremental and waterfall.
Excellent,
Yeah, it's a mix of them.
Yeah.
excellent, very good. Now when it comes to real practice, this is the most utilized.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is the most common even later when you learn about the process. you will get to see the UML diagrams. Like, for example, what are the UML diagrams you build or know about? Do you know, let's say, activity diagram? Do you know what class diagram?
Yes.
Do you know class diagram? Do you know sequence diagram? We'll touch base some of them. Okay, so let's do this. After this, we will just start with the activity for the prototyping. But in general, this is how it looks. So this is what we know as sequence diagram. And this one here is similar to object diagram. It's not class. Like here we treat it like different objects, like company, department, and stuff like that. We get to see how the interaction happens. Anyways, this model, I'll enhance it. So it's not the one that you will see in the final slides. But anyways, if we try to read the sequence diagram, let's give it a try. How many entity interacts in this application?
3.
Which are?
Users,
Perfect, okay. Now here, you might see that things happen first, and you might see these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, which indicate the steps, right? And these steps are happening over time. So you can't proceed, let's say, with a new request unless you receive a response, and so on. So this application, let's say, the user starts with opening the application, they access the webcam, they get photo, they detect a face, then what happens? It will tell, for example, he's happy, he's sad, he's stressed, right? Then it will identify this mood, and it will display it for the user. So it takes the mood literally from database to device, and from device to the user side. Do you see the hierarchy? So this one first, then this, okay? And then we have retrieving music, and then generating the playlist, and then the playlist will be displayed to the user side. So this is just a sample here.
Doctor?
Please.
What is the difference between the normal arrow and the one that has...
Oh, that's a very good question. I mean, you will learn this again later, but most likely, if you're expecting a response, like here, I sent a request, let's say, to database, usually a response comes in a dashed line. Okay, so in response to a request, usually it's dashed line. Okay? I would say this is not accurate, by the way, this one. But most of the time you will see that anything returns backward mostly is given in dashed lines, because usually it's taken from a database side or server side, while anything that's forward is most likely a straight line. Okay? You just need to push it into the right place based on the sequence of these transactions. Like, again, you can think of ATM machine, for example, like how you do, let's say, put the card, how you type the PIN code, how it processes this and make sure credentials are accurate, then it gets back with list of services you can choose from. It is the same exact concept here. All right, so what are the advantages now? So again, we're still working with the idea of increments, right? And still the customer is a priority, yeah? We deliver high priority increments first. So again, we prioritize our requirements. We make sure that whatever the customer needs to see is delivered first. Okay, remember with incremental model, what was the main disadvantage?
That takes more time and more cost.
And?
The end product might not even be the initial requirement.
And?
Costs.
And?
Risks.
We said what happens with incremental model? We keep on integrating what?
You said,
Lots of?
what is it called? Product breach? Or
You're close, okay. So we keep on adding what? Lots of changes, right? We said this is the most friendly type when it comes to models, when it comes to changes. But again, you have lots of changes coming in, right? And this affects what? Documentation. Now this one is not. Here, we document everything perfectly fine, okay? Now we keep track still of changes. We manage them even with tools. And we design the architecture to be reusable. So So every component is separate. We can reuse, build on top as much as needed. We have the UML models to take care of static and dynamic needs, and a final software that meets our own standards. Good? Clear? Okay. So again, a quick review. So we talk here. All right, we started with the waterfall model. Then we covered incremental. Then the reuse oriented, remember? And we also discussed here, not this, the V model that works mostly for validation and verification, yeah? And then we looked into the spiral model. And last one is the modern approach, which is RUP, or Rational Unified Process. Okay, I finished this, and this is the end of our chapter. Let's get back here. I think we have time. We have 10 minutes. Okay. So do you guys have pen, pencils? No. Nice. Right, let me give you this as a home take exercise, okay? And I expect you to bring actually 2 things for me next time. So every team will come to me next time bringing 2 papers, okay? So again, split yourself into a team of 3 people. Again, someone who will be the stakeholder, you will say the requirements, someone who will collect these requirements, okay? And a 3rd person who will just watch you both and try to map whatever you're saying into real design. Let's go with a paper paste, okay? This can be mobile application, can be web application, just any possible application type. And let's assume it's only 2 pages, all you need to design, okay? So tell me what happens here, okay? And how will you move from here to here, okay? You can use more than 2 papers if you want, but only 2 screens of your application, like a home page, let's say, and a login, for example, okay? But make this within a context. You can look into existing applications. You don't need to bring something out of nowhere, okay? So just look into existing applications. You wanna come up with your own idea, again, fine. But again, don't exceed 2 screens in total, okay? So I'll have this, inshallah, next time, submit it from your side. And
Do you want it in a paper?
just the paper, yes. That will be fine. I need, of course, your names to be documented, your IDs perhaps, yeah. And brief about the idea and the requirements that you collected.
Doctor, what are the 3 people? Stakeholder and the person.
Stakeholder, requirements elicitation person, and design person. Again, for requirements person, you just need to put these things into bullet points, okay? So based on your conversation with that stakeholder, what were the key requirements that you collected? Guys, this is not an assignment, but this is in-class activity, okay? And to keep it clear, not every class, like every couple of classes, I use this by the end, okay? Sometimes I utilize this for bonus, okay? For curving up. So again, the better you interact with them, the more, I mean, it's easy to do, and it's not right or false answer, but it brings up discussions. I think that's it. All good? Yes. There is a video here. Again?
Is it similar to the video you watched?
Yes, exactly. Similar to the video. Remember this one? So again, you can cut the papers. You can bring more than 2 if you want. That's okay. You can use smaller area. It doesn't have to be the full one, okay? So just utilize 2 papers in a way that you see appropriate. Okay? Clear? Make sense? Okay. Okay, I think I'll stop it here today. Okay. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I'll do that.
All good? So how many team we expect?
You want to do that, right?
Oh, almost 11 teams I expect, okay? Okay. All right, please prepare your phones and scan this QR here. Yes? Yes? I mean, okay, the 4th person, if there is any, what's gonna be his role? Maybe validation. If you wanna add a 4th person, go for validation and verification.
Customer support.
Yeah, so like you can judge actually if this matches the user needs or not. But again, every one of you works separately, okay? Don't discuss things. So you both exist, let's say all of you exist in one meeting, and after this meeting, each of you does the job separately.